does the Western Papal Church deviate and innovate in the second millennium? Or is the Orthodox Church frozen in the 8th century? I would actually say, yes, we want to be gladly frozen in the 8th century because we don't believe that the faith evolves, and we're not interested in innovations. And in fact, as we'll see, the Roman Catholic system does innovate, and in fact offers many justifications, philosophical arguments, evolution of dogma, etc., 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 to explain why in fact there was those innovations. So the innovations aren't denied, although sometimes they are denied because the argument is made that everybody from the earliest days universally knew, a la Vatican I, that the Roman see was infallible, indefectible, and universal in its jurisdiction and primacy. Again, what is the Synodicon? This is the document that if you especially are in a church where the bishop is present, in the Orthodox Church, typically this is still read. It's a liturgy, right? It includes the anathemas. You've probably seen the video I've shared. Anathema, right? That's from this service, the triumph of orthodoxy over heresy. Now, isn't it interesting that the only church that still does the ancient anathema service is the Orthodox Church? I actually think that this alone is a clear signpost indicator that the Orthodox Church is the true church, because the Roman Catholic Church does not do the anathemas anymore. They don't anathematize heretics anymore, especially after Vatican II, right? It's not ecumenical. But even still, most of the Orthodox churches where the bishop is present, they will, in many cases, maybe not in every case, due to time or due to shortening of the service, you still have the reading and singing of the anathema service. And so that alone shows that in this, I mean, how could you be the true apostolic church and not anathematize heresies when the church of the first millennium anathematizes heresies?
Actually, it's going to be read next Sunday, Sunday of Orthodoxy.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's another way, and we're gonna touch on that a bit later again.
Anathema.
Отечество наше,
I think Pope Benedict XVI said that we are fossilized in the first millennium. I would say we are petrified. That is keeping the faith of the apostle and of Saint Peter. He's saying that maybe Palamas is compatible with Thomism or Scotism or other things, or trying to basically falsify Saint Gregory Palamas's position, namely by using the term Neo-Palamite. So usually people will try to frame this as an armchair theologian debate. They'll say, "Oh, you can be a Palamite, a Catholic, even though Roman Catholicism affirms Thomism as its official philosophy." That's from some papal bulls, or just saying that it's a disagreement that has no real bearings in reality, or that Palamas doesn't really teach a real distinction. And so again, we need to go back to the beginning, and I was mentioning Saint Simeon the New Theologian for this reason. When did the entire quote-unquote Palamite controversy started? Because he was trying to defend the Hesychast monks. The trial is called In the Defense of the Hesychast Saint, And these people were seeing the same light that Saint Gregory the theologian saw, and rightfully called it the true light and God.
There is no such thing as polemism. This is, in fact, I made a video on this like straight up a year ago, on, I believe, Sunday of St. Gregory Palamas, where I basically made a rant saying there is no such thing as polemism in Orthodoxy. We don't believe in the idea that there can be theologically incompatible schools that are like optional, right? And this is kind of like it's a kind of a recent fad that people are pushing. And one thing I've noticed quite recently is that all heretical positions base their theology on either one or two people. Some of them can even be fathers, but they essentially just say, okay, we're going to base everything that we have, put all of our eggs in this one basket, and we're going to trust these people. So, for example, for the Roman Catholics, there's Saint Augustine, right? Saint for us as well, but mainly Thomas Aquinas, right? And for the Church of the East, for them, it's the Greek doctors. Nestorius is one of them, but also Theodore of Mopsuestia and Diodor of Tarsus. Their theology relies on them. For the Monophysites, it's Saint Cyril and Severus of Antioch. That's what they rely on. We don't have that kind of a view in Orthodoxy. We don't just say, oh, it's Saint Gregory Palamas and like that's it. We don't believe in that. When we talk about Orthodox doctrines regarding existential distinction, Christology, Tridology, we invoke numerous different saints, both East and West. So we include Saint John Damascus, Saint Maximus, Saint Cyril is included, Saint Ambrose, Saint Hilary of Poitiers. All of these saints are included when we make these arguments. And so this kind of is a huge distinction between our positions, I will say. And another big mistake, I think, that is being made mostly by Roman Catholics, but I think even by a lot of Orthodox Christians, is this separation of this is what I personally call mystical theology and scholastic theology. So let me kind of define what I mean here. I consider liturgy, prayer, that kind of stuff. I consider that in the domain of mystical theology, whereas scholastic theology is it's the stuff of philosophy or theology. But these things are not separated, okay? You can't just like pick and choose and like mix different doctrines and make up this kind of hybrid nonsense. And that's what I've noticed a lot of Roman Catholics kind of want to do, is that they want to pick and choose, like they want to pick and choose Orthodox aesthetics, liturgy, but when it's about or scholastic theology, they're like, oh, we don't need that. We have our own in that. No, if you're gonna have or mystical theology, you're also going to necessarily have scholastic theology, because they're both connected. And as Nick pointed out, the whole reason why this debate happened between Saint Gregory and his opponents is because Saint Gregory was trying to defend hesychasm, and he tried to defend hesychasm by arguing that we can interact with God and we don't need created mediums to do so. Whereas his opponents will say, actually, it is only true created mediums, and XYZ reasons why that is the case. So once you kind of understand, everything is connected, right? The liturgical life, the mystical life, and this, I don't know, scholastic theology or whatever you want to call it, is connected, and you cannot just take one of them and have your own thing. And this is
in the economy of the world, we can become deified, and that's where Eucharistic theology comes in.
Yeah,
it doesn't make sense without the energies.
Let me read the real brief here. This is one of the great quotes that I keep referring back to refute all three non-Orthodox groups. It refutes, in my view, the Protestants, the Roman Catholics, and the Oriental heterodox, because number one, this is a letter from Cyril. It's the first letter of Cyril to Zexensis that especially the Oriental Orthodox don't like. They don't like the later Cyril that talks about in these letters the two natures that continue to have their properties even after the union. And we'll notice something very insightful here that St. John Damascus will repeat. So notice that St. Cyril's argument here is going to be the exact same argument that's repeated by St. John Damascus. He says in section 10 of the first letter to Zexensis, even after the resurrection of the same body which had suffered and continued to exist, although it no longer contained any human weakness. So he's talking about the resurrection of Christ no longer having what we call the blameless passions now, which would be that he was, subject to hunger, to thirst, to weariness in his flesh.
And being impassible, yeah.
Yeah. We maintain that it was no longer susceptible to hunger or weakness or anything like this, but it was thereafter incorruptible. And not only that, but life-giving as well, since it is the body of life. That is, it is the body of the only begotten. Now it is radiant with divine glory and is seen to be the body of God. Now keep in mind, being radiant with the divine glory, right, that's not a creature. I don't know anybody who thinks that the divine glory is a creation or a creature. So even if someone should call Christ, call it, talking about the body, divine, just as one might call a man's body human, so I'm not predicating here, a fitting thought would not be mistaken. In my opinion, this is what the most wise Paul said, even though we have known Christ according to the flesh, nevertheless we know him so no longer, right? 2 Corinthians 5:16, because he's resurrected. As I have said, because it is God's own body, it transcended all human things, yet the earthly body itself did not undergo a transformation into the essence or nature, ousia, of Godhead. So here we have a clear statement that something is communicated to the human nature of Christ to make it deified and radiant with divine glory, but it is not the essence that is communicated. Now, if you read the Florovsky essay that I posted many, many times about Athanasius and creation, you'll know that he talks about right after Athanasius, St. Cyril picks up Athanasius's essence energy distinction arguments and uses them continuously. So it's not even further, this is not like a speculative argument like, oh, I found one possible place in St. Cyril of Alexandria where he teaches the essence energy distinction. No, no, no. He teaches it frequently. It's not even in dispute. But I'm going to be quiet here in a minute, but I just wanted to move on to point out that St. John of Damascus follows through with this line of argumentation in the book 3 of On the Orthodox Faith, where he applies all of the essence energy argumentation to Christology, right? And this is where, as you've heard me say for many years, it's really in Christology that the essence energy distinction becomes crystal clear. Thus, his divinity, talking about Christ and the incarnation, communicates its own glories to the body, while it remains without part in the suffering of the flesh. For his flesh did not suffer through his divinity in the same way as divinity energized through the flesh. So this is talking about the communication of the uncreated energy and glory to the human nature of Christ to deify it. There's an interpenetration of the energies, the Sixth Council will end up saying, right? That whatever he does humanly, he does divinely, and whatever he does divinely, he does humanly, because there's a perfect synthesis of the two natures and the two energies and the two wills. But the synthesis is not a mixing or a blending to the extent that these natures or energies or wills or faculties lose their constituent natural properties. The human nature never becomes the divine nature, right? Even though it is deified and raised, it retains its created natural properties, as the Sixth Council itself teaches. So there you have two fathers making the same line of argumentation, and I'll show you in just a minute where Cyril, I'll let Father Deacon or somebody else speak, but where Cyril will take the same argument that he's just made in the letter to Sextensus about Christology, and he'll apply it to the Eucharist in the Anathemas of Ephesus.